In our last video, we covered the forming of the separated kingdoms, England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, under one crown and the ancient tension between Ireland and the others, all in an effort to ramp up to our next speech. Today, we focus on the Irish political landscape in the 18th and 19th century and the political divides between the Irish and English and among the Irish. We then will deliver Edward Carson's speech, Ulster is asking to be let alone. This is Speaking Through the Ages, where we bring back the dead in an attempt to bring out the values, beliefs, and internal struggles of those humans that came before. We give context to and deliver historical speeches that motivated people to kill, riot, make salt, and sign papers. Going into the 18th century, the Scottish and English Parliament became one through the Act of Union in 1707. The Irish Parliament remained separate for another 100 years. The majority of Ireland was Catholic, and many Catholic leaders actually converted to Protestant. There were predominantly two groups of Protestant in Ireland, the Presbyterians in Ulster and those in the Anglican Church of Ireland. The Presbyterians had limited political power, but lived under better living and economic conditions than the Catholics. The Anglo-Irish owned most of the farmland, which Catholic peasants rented and worked. The majority of the political power was held by the 5% of the population belonging to the Church of Ireland. Each major sector of the Irish economic and political landscape, the bulk of the farmland, the legal system, the local government, and the majority in the Irish Parliament was held by these Anglo-Irish Protestants. They strongly distrusted the Presbyterians in Ulster and were convinced of their Protestant superiority over the Catholics. They were only outranked by the English politicians in London. However, this Anglo-Irish group was split. It was made up of these absentee landlords who lived in England and those who lived in Ireland. The Navigation Acts in the late 1600s permitted the importing of English goods into Ireland tariff-free and simultaneously imposed tariffs on the Irish exports traveling in the opposite direction. Despite this, the absentee landlords poorly managed their farms and lands, and maximizing production for food exports instead of domestic consumption. This did not benefit those living in Ireland, and a wedge was driven between those identified as Protestant Irish nationalists and the Protestant absentee landlords. On top of all of this, between 1740 and 1741, two mini ice ages caused a famine killing 400,000 people. Even with so much political tension, the 18th century was still relatively peaceful compared to the previous one. However, emotions intensified by the late 1700s. In 1791, inspired by the American and French Revolutions, a small group of Protestant liberals formed the Society of the United Irishmen. The society broke down boundaries and combined Catholic, Methodist, Presbyterian, and other Protestant dissenters, pushing for new democratic policies like the Catholic emancipation. They were driven underground, where they worked with the French and vowed to break from England. It came to a head in the Irish Rebellion of 1798. The rebel troops, made up of those United Irishmen and French supporters, were squashed by those loyal to the British, which included most of Ulster and the British forces. The death toll climbed to somewhere between 10 and 30,000. As a consequence, the British Parliament and the members of the Irish Parliament loyal to England and those who had no choice dissolved the Irish Parliament and merged the two into one. This is known as the 1801 Act of Union. And now we have Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England under one crown and one parliament as the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Things improved for the Catholic and Protestant dissenters throughout the 19th century. In fact, as part of the 1801 Act of Union, Parliament tried to repeal the remaining laws that discriminated against the Catholics, Presbyterians, Baptists, Methodists, and others alike. This was controversial and adamantly blocked by King George III. However, the Catholic Relief Act of 1829 was finally passed, thanks to the leadership of the Tory 1st Duke of Wellington, Commander-in-Chief of British Armed Forces, Prime Minister and decorated war hero for his defeat of Napoleon at Waterloo, Arthur Wellesley. Arthur threatened to resign as Prime Minister if King George IV didn't sign the bill into law. Arthur's political sway and power was formidable enough to force the king's hand. Then, in 1832, the Irish Reformation Act and the English Reformation Act were passed, reconstructing the voting demographics and districts, which increased the number of representatives in the House of Commons. In the 1840s, a fungus-based eukaryotic microorganism known as Phytophthora infestans caused an infamous disease known as the potato blight, which spread across northern Europe. This, combined with some other political factors, caused a massive famine in multiple places across the region, including Ireland, Belgium, Prussia, France, Sweden, Württemberg, Spain, Netherlands, and the Highlands of Scotland. This famine became known as the Irish potato famine, despite its affecting multiple regions. This was because Ireland was hit the hardest. There were approximately 1 million total deaths from the starvation and disease, but Irish deaths accounted for roughly 90% of that number. Ireland's population took a devastating blow and never quite recovered. The population fell from 8 million to 5 million in just 10 years. It continued to decline for various reasons, including a long-term side effect of famine, infertility. In 1911, it had 4.1 million. In 1971, 2.98 million. Today, 4.9 million. So, still, just a little over half of what it was in 1841. Furthermore, there were additional rebellions in 1803, 1848, and 1867. None of which were as big as the 1798 rebellion, but the point is, a strong Irish nationalism was alive and well. Charles Stewart Parnell founded the Irish Parliamentary Party in the 1870s and put Irish Home Rule back on the political map. Prime Minister Gladstone tried twice to pass a Home Rule bill in 1886 and 1893, but failed. Despite this, the Irish National won small but important victories throughout the late and early 20th century. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th century. Land was still mostly owned by English families that did not live in Ireland, and they rented this land out to be farmed by the Irish. Parliament passed laws in 1870, 1881, 1889, 1903, and 1909 that slowly broke up the English estates and allowed them to be purchased. This enabled most tenant farmers to buy the land they worked on, and it lowered the rent on others. As the Irish slowly gained more power, Irish Home Rule kept cropping up in the political agenda. But remember, most of Ireland was Catholic farmers and Irish nationalists. However, the northeast, or Ulster, was mostly industrialized and Protestant. These Protestants feared losing political power and economic wealth. Therefore, they favored the Irish Unionist, those in favor of staying with the United Kingdom. Our next speech was given by Edward Carson, who was an Irish Unionist. We'll cover Edward Carson in our next video, and then we'll deliver the last speech of Season 1. Ulster is asking to be let alone. Thanks for exploring the ages with us. In this video, we covered a glimpse of the 18th and 19th century Irish struggle and its political divides, not just between the English and Irish, but among the Irish themselves. Throughout Speaking Through the Ages, we'll encounter different people, cultures, and histories. We'll cover more detail and reveal little by little as each speech requires. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And remember, if you like this video, be sure to light up that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications and leave comments to correct any errors, exaggerations, or perfunctory explanations this novice history fan gets wrong. See you next time, where the dead teach.